If you turn on news right now, you will hear the exact same story every single channel. You will hear Western analysts claiming that the resistance in the west of Asia has been severely weakened. You will hear that the American and Israeli military apparatus has reestablished its dominance and the current world order is perfectly intact. They are lying to you. Or at very least, they are completely blind to what is actually happening. Because if you look closely, if you strip away the propaganda and look at the raw reality, and last a few months, something mathematically impossible has happened. A psychological and military line was crossed that has not been crossed in modern human history. In this video, I'm going to show you a framework for reading the current global conflict that almost no one in the English-speaking world has access to. It is a framework that explains why superpowers like Russia and China are watching the west of Asia with absolute envy. And explain why the United States Navy, the most powerful maritime force in human history, was recently told you cannot pass and actually couldn't. And most importantly, it explains why the resistance axis hasn't just survived, it has already won. If you ever felt that the mainstream narrative about the west of Asia, about Iran, and about this war doesn't add up, say with me. Because once you see the world through this lens, you will never be able to unsee it. Let's start with a basic question. What does power actually look like? For the last 80 years, global power has been defined by a very specific set of rules. The United States and its allies sat at the top, everyone else sat below, and the golden rule of the system was simple. You do not directly strike an empire. Before this recent war, think about how the world operated. If a politician in the Middle East even used a harsh word against the United States or Israel, there would be a panic. Apologies would be issued, back-channel diplomats would scramble to smooth things over. The psychological dominance of the West was so absolute that they didn't even need to use their weapons. The fear of their weapons was enough to keep the entire world in line. Now look at today. We are seeing missiles fired daily. We are seeing direct, unopposed strikes on military bases. We are seeing a coalition of resistance forces looking the American empire directly into eyes and saying, no. Do you realize how unprecedented this is? Think about Russia and China. These are global superpowers. They have nuclear arsenals. They have permanent seats on the UN Security Council. They have massive economies. And yet they are Iran and the resistance axis with absolute astonishment. Why? Because despite all their wealth and all their nukes, neither Russia nor China has the courage to fire a single direct shot at an American military installation. They don't dare. They posture, they complain, but they do not cross that line. But Iran did. The resistance did. The Western media tries to frame this as a regional tension. They try to minimize it. But what we are actually witnessing is the collapse of the psychological fortress. In Islamic history, there is a famous battle called the Battle of Khaybar. Khaybar was a massive, heavily fortified stronghold. It was considered absolutely impenetrable. The people inside thought they were untouchable, and the people outside were terrified of it. But when the gates of Khaybar were finally breached by Imam Ali, the myth of invincibility shattered. What we are living through right now is the modern conquest of Khaybar. The psychological fortress of American and Israeli invincibility has been breached. And that in itself is a massive historic victory. But why doesn't the media talk about it this way? Why do telling you that the resistance is losing? To understand this, you need to understand that there is a war going on right now that is much bigger than the war of the missiles and drones. It is the war of narratives. In modern world, there are essentially two ways to read the history. There are two lenses. The first one is the earthly narrative, or in some distance, we can call it satanic narrative. Satanic narrative designed to keep your mind trapped on the surface of the reality. It wants you to calculate power purely through materialism. Who has more money? Who has more fighter jets? Who control the banking system? And if you look at the world through the satanic or earthly narrative, you will always feel despair. You will look at the destruction, the rubble, the sheer volume of the bombs being dropped, and you will conclude we are losing. There's no hope. And that is exactly why the architects of the current world order want you to think. They want you to believe that because they hold the material advantage, they hold the ultimate power. But there is a second lens, the divine narratives. The divine narrative does not ignore material reality. It doesn't say you shouldn't build weapon or prepare for defense. But it understands that history is not driven by whoever has the most money. History is driven by the divine laws of history. These laws are as real and just as unbreakable as the laws of physics. Gravity works whether you believe it or not. The divine laws of history work whether the Pentagon believes in it or not. One of these absolute laws is that whenever a true movement of justice stands firm against a tyrannical empire, the empire will eventually collapse under the weight of its own arrogance. It might take time, it will certainly require sacrifice, but outcome is mathematically guaranteed by the creator of the universe. When you look at the war through the divine narrative, the destruction doesn't mean defeat. It means the empire is panicking. It means the empire has run out of strategic option and is resorting to raw, naked violence because its psychological control has evaporated. The fact that Iran can shut down the Red Sea to hostile shipping, something the US never imagined was possible, just a military tactic. It's a manifestation. It's a divine narrative. It is the wicked material force utilizing a higher spiritual and a strategic intelligence to paralyze the stronger material force. But here's the most important question. If this is a divine narrative, how does it include the rest of the world? Look at what's happening on the university campuses in the United States. Look at massive protests in London, in Paris, in Sydney, in all across the world. Look at the No King rally that we had in like past few days. Look at the people, all different religions, backgrounds, and political beliefs who are suddenly waking up and standing against the global order. These people are not Muslims. They don't know the Islamic theology of the end times. So why are they suddenly aligning with the resistance? How do you build a global alliance against a deeply entrenched corrupt system? You do not start with a shared love. You start with the shared unity. Think about it. Shared love, agreeing on exactly what the perfect society looks like, agreeing on technology, agreeing on theology, agreeing on philosophy. That takes a very long time to build. It is deep and it creates long-term stability, but it is slow. Shared enmity acts like lightning. Right now, the world is being united by a shared enmity towards the injustice, towards the hypocrisy, and the sheer brutality of American-Israeli geopolitical machine. A university student in Columbia University and a resistance fighter in the west of Asia might not share the same religion, but they share the exact same disgust for a system that values profit and power over human life. This shared enmity is the catalyst. It is the spark. Throughout history, the greatest awakenings started exactly this way. The Pharaoh didn't fall because everyone suddenly understood the deep theology of the prophet Moses. The Pharaoh fell because the people realized that the Pharaoh's system was fundamentally corrupt, and their shared enmity toward his oppression opened their hearts to the alternative Moses was offering. The global elite knows this. This is why they are terrified of independent media. They're not afraid of few protests. They are afraid of that the shared enmity is creating a bridge between the Islamic resistance and the Western public. Because once this bridge is built, the shared enmity eventually transforms. People will start asking, okay, we know what we're against, but what we are for? Who is actually standing up to this system and surviving? And when they look for the answer, they find the resistance axis. They find a system of thought that has successfully resisted the empire for 47 years. Shared enmity becomes shared curiosity, and shared curiosity eventually becomes shared truth. This brings us to why this channel exists and why you are watching this right now. For a long time, people in the west of Asia thought of their struggle as a regional issue. We are defending our borders. We are defending our countries. But the events of last few months have acted as a massive catalyst. We have suddenly realized that this is not a regional conflict. This is a global civilization shift. Presenting these truths to the world is not a favor we are doing for anyone. It is a strict, undeniable obligation. Every single person who understands the divine narrative has a duty to share it. Why? Because the world is starving for it. Western society has reached the absolute peak of the technological and material advancement, and yet psychologically and spiritually it is collapsing. Rates of depression, anxiety, and a purposeless life are at all-time highs. People in the West have everything they need to live comfortably, but they have absolutely nothing to live for. On the other hand, the resistance axis has discovered the secret to resilience. They have discovered a truth that allows a person to stand in the rubble of their own home, look at the sky, and feel absolute peace and certainty. We have something the world desperately needs, and its very essence. And this channel, the narrative of victory, is here to be that bridge. We are not here to give you the lens. We are here to show you the underlying architecture of the world right now, so that when the media tells you we won, you can look at the exact same event and say, no, you are collapsing. We are living in the most important geopolitical and spiritual transition in centuries. The fortress has been breached. The illusion of invincibility is gone. The shared enmity against the corrupt global order is waking up. Millions of people who were asleep just a year ago. This is what a victory actually looks like in the divine narrative. It doesn't start with a signed treaty. It starts with the awakening of the human heart and the shattering of fear. If this perspective makes use of you, if you are tired of the surface level propaganda and want to understand the deep civilization current driving the world today, then you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone who needs to see the past, the mainstream illusion, and in our next video, we are going to look at the very specific event from 1400 years ago, a battle where a small group of people were surrounded by a massive coalition of superpowers, and show you exactly how the laws of that battle are playing out step by step in the west of Asia today. And welcome to the narrative of victory.